In this installment of Unpacked.
Stacey spoke when she was 9 months old.
What?
Sometimes when I'm introduced, people will say she wrote her first book at the age of 7 without her parents' knowledge, and that is completely true.
She addressed 1,200 metric learners when she was 8. At the age of 12, I didn't know that she would be traveling around the world.
Raising and nurturing a gifted child. Our guests are here to share their stories. Let's unpack. Stacey Frew is a 14-year-old award-winning author based in Johannesburg. From a young age, it became apparent to her parents that Stacey was talented, and together with teachers, they started nurturing her gift. Stacey and her mother, Victorine, are here to share their stories. Let's unpack. Welcome to the show, Stacey and Victorine. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
So, Stacey, you actually are an author, and you published your first book at the age of 8. But I'm curious to know, what were your earliest childhood memories? What's the first thing you can remember as young and as far back as you can go?
So as young and as far back as I can go, being a child, I was always, I always had a passion for writing and creating stories. I remember I would go up to my friends and ask if I could draw them and create little stories using those drawings. I was horrible at what I did, but I would make these little paper books and these stories, which I would keep, which have somehow disappeared. But those are my earliest memories of me being a writer, and that's probably how I started.
But outside of the writing, how would you have described, or let me say, how did you feel as a 2, 3, 4-year-old child?
Well, as a child, I was very, very stubborn. My mom can elaborate more on that, but at home, I am the loudest of my siblings, and when I have my position, I hold my position, but at school and other environments, I tend to be a little bit more quiet, and I'm sort of observing my surroundings more than I am reacting to them.
So, Mom, do you recall what kind of a pregnancy you had with her?
Pregnancy. Yes, I do recall. I actually kept a book, a memory book from 12 weeks of pregnancy to 1 year, 8 months after she was born. And I did that for 3 of my children. I've got 4 of them.
Wow.
By the 4th child, I was tired of writing, so I kept the first 9 months only. But of Stacey, the pregnancy was it wasn't a difficult one. I had just come from a firstborn that I had 10 stitches after delivery. And my firstborn's pregnancy was very nice. So I've got 4 children, and the reason I have up to 4 is because I think pregnancy is just the best time for me. I love it. I love my body. When I'm pregnant, I am confident and everything. And Stacey's birth was easier than the brother's birth because with the brother, I struggled for 23 hours. And with Stacey was born in water. I got into labor, called the midwives, and they said to me, come in. And I said to them, no, I'm not going to come in until the baby is close. And I stayed. I took advantage of the fact that my birth clinic was 3 minutes drive from the house. And I don't like hospital environment. So I got into hospital, and the midwife is running water and then asked me to get in because I had chosen to have a birth. Asked me to get in, and she's holding her phone because she had to travel that morning. It was 5 a.m. that she was born. 7 a.m., sorry. So she had to travel. They were going on holiday. And I had called her in. So she's holding her phone, updating her husband of how far I'm gone. As I get into water, and she says to me, sit down. I sit down, and she says to me, open your legs. Baby just came out.
Wow. So from the beginning, she was way ahead of her time.
Baby came out, midwife's phone in water. Husband is there recording. Husband panics and records everything. He's supposed to like screen. He records everything. And that was it. Baby was out. And it was very nice because my mom had just passed away when I was nursing my first boy. I couldn't go for my mom's funeral. I'm from Cameroon, by the way. I couldn't travel for the funeral, and then I fell pregnant. Then I went home when I was 12 weeks pregnant to see my mom's grave. And then I came back and I prayed all along for a girl so I could name my mother.
Oh,
so when she came
Stacey
out,
is your mother's name. Yes.
Not Stacey means resurrection. So my mother back to life, and her middle name B is my mother's name.
Okay.
Yes. So it was sort of raising your mom again. And for me, it just changed so many things, even for my husband. Because ironically, she's got two middle names. One is my husband's older sister who had also passed away. So we named her after dead people. so they seem to resurrect it in her, and she just behaved old.
So, and I can so sense that old soul thing that you're talking about and the maturity, and I'll come back to you on that. What do you recall the type of child that she was? Was there anything in particular that she would do that would make you realize that there's something different about her?
In retrospect, yes. But when she was growing up as a baby, we didn't really pay attention. So people are reminding us, we are talking as family and going back to stories. Stacey spoke when she was 9 months old.
What?
And I have a cousin who would come home. She loved drinking alcohol. So she would drink and go like, enjoy my life.
Yes.
And she would put the glass down. And she started doing that. When she was 9, she would go, enjoy her life. But we didn't really know what she was saying. And she didn't walk. All my 3 children walked at 9 months and 9 months and a half. She walked at 10 and a half on New Year's Day in my brother's house. She never crawled, she never stood up. So we had no sign. We sat like we're sitting now, and I'm feeding kids because I love hanging around kids. So I'm feeding the family kids on the floor, and she just stood up and ran to my brother. And the party came to a standstill. Like it was a home full of people. Everyone just rejoiced. So those are the early things. My cousin actually nicknamed her the girl who sold her legs to buy a voice, because she would speak without walking. And that aside, she is a bully.
What do you mean?
She is extremely assertive. From when she was breastfeeding, she would have to get her way. And it has not changed. She's got characteristics where you cannot change a child. We've tried to change her. When she's somewhere, she's somewhere. You will notice her.
So just to clarify for everybody watching, you're not saying she's a bully because she terrorizes children at school. No. You're saying she's a bully because she knows what she wants, right? So she's assertive.
Assertive, extremely. Yes. I've not seen a child like this, not because it's my child, and also because it's my child.
Yes.
And because I've got others to compare with.
Yes.
I'm raising 4 of them. And she's just an opinion leader. But she's also a child that is not gullible. So from when she was young, you can't actually tell her that pregnancy comes from water. She would keep quiet, but she'll come back and tell you, Mommy, I found out where pregnancy comes from. So she's that child who searches, you know. I remember when she was 4, she and her brother, they duped me at Santon City. We had gone to a hotel and we sat down and coffee was free on the wall. So they said to me, can we have coffee? I said to them, yes, take money, go buy. So they went, they got their coffee. They didn't bring back my money. So when I'm asking for change, they kept saying to me, at 4, kept saying to me, Mommy, we'll give you change at home. They're planning to go home and get change from their dad. So they go home, they ask their dad gives them change. They ask me, how much do you think coffee would cost there? And I said, around 20 rand. So they go to their dad, they took 60 rand, and they came and gave me. And the next day, she said to me, Mommy, you didn't read. It was written free coffee. So she's that child who, from the young.
So paid attention, observant.
Yeah.
And how did she perform, in the early years of school?
Very well, very advanced. She's not an academically intelligent child, if I could put it like that, until today. But she's also a child that knows everything. So she is, if she's there, the teachers will tell you, Stacey's a leader, Stacey's a reader, Stacey's a storyteller, Stacey's everything. But she's not number one. That's what I mean. And the reason I think is because from day one, she's also been the youngest. Everyone is a year older than her. So I always say to her, don't push yourself to be first. Don't push yourself. Just keep being the advanced person you are and keep being the reader that you are. So she's always been like that from the beginning.
How does it make you feel hearing your mom describe you the way she's describing you?
It makes me feel really good because my mom, she speaks really well, and the way she articulates herself and the way she tells those stories is truly amazing. And I'm learning more about myself in this process as well. These stories I've completely forgotten because they've happened when I was so young. And I also think that it makes me feel good, except for the part where she said I'm not academically intelligent, because I do try and I do hold myself to an academic standard. So yeah.
Well, keep in mind, usually parents will judge on the marks that they see. Am I right, Mom?
Very.
So,
yeah.
you know, take that with a pinch of salt, I will say, and keep trying. So now, for you, Stacey, I mean, you mentioned that you used to like telling stories. Were these stories of things that you just imagined in your mind, or were they stories of things that you had heard before?
So my storytelling first came when I was a lot younger and I didn't know how to read at the time. So I would use these pictures to interpret what the book was about. So I had no idea, no forethought, and I just, opened my mouth and started saying what I saw. And then it turned from looking at pictures to using my imagination and further observing my surroundings around me. So if I saw a cloud that looked like a monkey, I would try and interpret that to try and make my younger siblings laugh, or make them scared, or whatever came to mind.
And I mean, that's beautiful that you even had the inclination to do that, because also some kids, while they're imaginative, usually look to their parents to explain something to them. Was she the type of child who'd say, "Mommy, what's this?" or would she be the one coming to you to tell you what this is?
She is both, but more of her is the type of person that even if you tell her what she knows, she tries to find out more.
Yes.
Yeah, so she is that child who would come and ask questions. She's that child who would tell you things. And she's that child who would notice that you've told her a lie. Unlike her siblings, but particularly her elder brother, who would just go outright and say, "Mommy, that's not true." She keeps quiet. And then she comes back days after or hours after and asks you again. And then takes a conversation further to say, yesterday you told me this, and I found out, but I thought you were joking, so I came back.
Yes.
Which is also part of what I said. She bullies me because now I have to be on my toes for everything, or I have to keep quiet if I don't know. So with her, you can't just say, it's green. You must know that truly it's green. So my husband and I, we really struggle to raise her in that domain, because she's just, in midway both.
In terms of, at some point you learned to read and write. What was that discovering the reading for you, from what you can remember, the first stories you were reading, and if you enjoyed the fact that a book was telling you a story, you weren't making it up in your mind?
So the first book I ever read had something to do with whales. I don't quite remember the name, but that book for me was so encapsulating and so exciting, because now I could actually understand what the pictures were saying to me. And that for me opened me up to a whole new domain. So I think that's why I developed faster in terms of reading than my peers, because I was just reading every single chance I could get. And once you unpack this knowledge of reading, you can never stop. Every single word you see, you're able to interpret it, you're able to attach a meaning, a connotation, denotation to that word. And so that for me was very, very exciting. So.
And did you connect with it in a way, because some people, or let me say some children, will describe that they found friendships in books, and books were more of their friends than actual other children at school?
I think it's because I spent a lot of time in my head back then, and even now, that I think a lot. And so when I read these books, it opens up my imagination for me to create other scenarios and other thoughts. So yes, books are still held very closely to my heart. I love the feeling it gets when I'm pushed into the separate world, being where I am. But I also do value in real life and real friendships between my classmates, my peers, and my teachers, etc.
Did you ever have imaginary friends?
No, I can't say I did. And
She did. Yes, she did.
Mommy says you did.
She did.
So you don't remember having Mommy, tell us about these imaginary friends.
So when Stacey, I can't remember if she was 3 or 4, she wanted to be a chicken. and she had friends that were chickens. and she would quack
As in
with
that
them.
don't exist, right?
I don't know. I can't tell.
Okay.
So
No, I mean, you didn't have chickens in your
I
home.
never saw them. No,
Okay,
I never
I
saw the
understand.
friends. But she would say to me, Mommy, you know, when a chicken says quack, quack, the chicken is hungry. So I'm like, how do you know? And she was like, because I'll be a chicken when I grow up, but Chicken Selling told me this. So that Selling is a name. So I'll go like, who is Chicken Selling? And she's like, my friend with brown feathers. So she wanted to be a chicken because she had friends who were chickens.
I'm assuming you don't still want to be a chicken when you grow up. Because your fate might not look so great.
I might consider it easy life, but no.
Okay, so now you get to the point you're reading. It's an exciting time. When do you start realizing that the writing you want to do is not just writing for school?
Well, there's a story behind why I started writing my first book. But like I said before that, I would write short stories about my friends or things that I saw about in class. And I did enjoy writing for school because we had creative assessments and assignments back in like grade 2 where we would narrate our holidays and our stories, asked to draw small pictures and stuff like that. So I enjoyed doing a little bit of writing on my own. But the reason why I actually wrote my first book and got into my writing career was that back in 2014, my mother graduated with her master's, and my uncle had come to do a video recording of the whole celebration. So that weekend, while we were watching the recording, I kept on seeing everyone praise this one particular book. And at the time, 7-year-old me had no idea what a thesis was and that you had to write a book in order to graduate with your master's. So I put 2 and 2 together and came to the conclusion that my mother had written this magnificent book without telling me. And so I decided I was going to write my own book without telling my mother and my father. So that's why sometimes when I'm introduced, people say she wrote her first book at the age of 7 without her parents' knowledge. And that is completely true, because to me, I was, getting revenge at my mother to say, look, I can also write a book without you knowing. So
did you eventually understand how it actually all works?
Yeah, much later, after the book was already written, yes.
Like 2 years after. Even.
So take us back then to that moment, because like you say, oh, okay, she wrote a book, I'm going to write a book. What is the thought process that you go through? Because a lot of people literally go on Google to find articles or video clips giving them how-to guides to write a book. And you didn't necessarily have access to that.
No.
So what was the thought process? How did that, roll out?
It was in a very emotion-intense moment. So I just sat down on my computer and just started jotting about this imaginative story about 2 cats. And so my thought process was just write what comes to mind. I had my older brother. He was the only one in my family that knew that I was writing a book. But he was just there to help me with my spelling and help me on how to formulate particular sentences. So to me, it was just writing down what I thought and, continuing.
And where do you believe these thoughts come from? The ideas. Yeah.
The ideas would come from, like I said, I'm a very observant person, so me observing things around me. So the themes in my books have close family correlations, and so I spend most of my time around my family, so you'll pick up certain themes from there. And when I started getting into my activism work, more of my books aligned with that, and so that's how.
So give me an example, because a lot of authors or even creatives pull from their real life into their art. What was it that was inspiring you or got you to want to pull from the people around you to include in your art?
I think most of the things that are portrayed in my book is the bad and how to solve it and to the good. So, for example, when I'd have a fight between my siblings or my cousins, I would use that as a lesson to say, okay, we're going to fight. We are family, so that's what we're going to do. But it's how we move on from that. It's how we resolve those problems and continue living together as family. So things like that are portrayed.
How long did it take you to write that first book?
The first book took me about 3-4 months, and then I told my parents, and the publishing process took much, much longer, and my mom can explain why.
But what did moms, before we even get to the publishing part, you took 3 or 4 months to write a book. Some people have been writing books for years. So, Mom, that's you. How did you find out that she was writing or had written a book?
Wow. So it's like she said, it's a very emotional story. The day we were watching the video, I was very happy because I had had my master's degree after 4 children. And the people were watching the video and talking about that because most of my friends didn't know I was studying. So I studied in silence.
Why do you like secrets, Mom?
No, it wasn't secret. I work in skills development. So all my time, I don't have time to interact. So you can't call somebody on the phone and say, "Come, hey, I'm studying," if you know what I mean.
Yes.
So it didn't come up to say. And then I invited them to a graduation because first I had gone into University of Johannesburg to study for 3 years. But I pushed it and I studied for 18 months. So it also was shorter. And that 18 months obviously was 18 months of cutting off from friends and relatives, focusing, doing your thing. So I invite them on and they go on camera and they're like, "We didn't know she studied." So when I was studying, I spent a lot of time in their school. And I think that is what actually got them into books because I became a library mom.
I see.
It was the only way I could go to class at 9 o'clock when you drop off kids at 7. So I would hang around in school. I would do the school library. I would gossip with mothers and everything. And then from there, I go to class because I was doing partially full-time. I go to class. From class, I go to work. So I really didn't have socializing time, and I didn't disclose. Anyway, so I invited most of these library mothers also in school, the women that I gossiped with, to my graduation, and their spouses and the people, their friends, parents, and they then interviewed, and they're talking about the fact that they spent time with me, but they didn't know I'm studying. They're talking about the fact that how would I have studied? My last born was 5 months old when I started the studying. And they watched. I'm sitting there, I'm watching people talking nice things about me. I'm crying. I like crying. You've seen me wiping my eyes already. So when I'm happy, I cry. So I like crying. And then I turn around, she's crying also. So I hit her because I call her Mama. So I hit her. Her brother is sitting here, she's sitting here. Then the other kids are playing. They were too young. So I hit her. I'm like, oh, so emotional, right? And then she's like, "Leave me alone." And she ran off. So I followed her and I'm like, "What's happening?"
So you didn't understand that she was having a moment of thinking you hid something from her and you were upset.
No, I didn't.
So now, how did you find out, or actually rather, how did you tell Mom that she had written a book?
So it all happened around February, the beginning of the year, when I approached my mother and I was like, "Look, Mom, I'd written this book." It was a school morning. I barged into her bedroom and I was like, "Mom, come see." And she was very reluctant. She didn't want to, leave and come hear what I was talking about. She actually thought that it was a school project given to me by the school as an assignment. And so she said to me that your teacher would be very happy, Teacher Jill. And I corrected her, being the type of person I am. And I'm like, "Mom, Teacher Jill's my Zulu teacher, and my computer teacher is actually Miss Passon." And so it took a few minutes of pressuring, and she decided to come to my room and see what this was all about. So as she gets into the room, instead of going, because I have this computer that I write on, instead of going to the computer, she goes onto the desk looking for a hard or handwritten book. So I direct her to the computer. She touches the mouse, switches it on, and scrolls down for a few pages, and she notices the length. And so she looks at me, and she was like, "Okay, I'll read it later." And I'm like, "No, sit down and read it now." But we have school, so my mom has
I see what you mean
other children
about the
ready.
bullying. I see. You're like, "Mom,
me,
sit down now."
She's blocking me, like, "Sit down."
So I try to get my mom to sit down, but she has 3 other children that need to prepare for school. So then she makes this agreement with me, and she's like, "Okay, I'll take you out for brunch this weekend if you just let me go." So I'm like, "Okay." And I follow her, then I ask her, "Mom, what's brunch?" And then she explains that it's both breakfast and lunch. So I'm like, "Okay, that's very good." Now I let her move freely. And then I run back to her a few minutes later, and then I ask, "How are you going to carry my computer out of the house?" And then that's when she explains to me the USB system and so on, so forth. So that's how she found out. My dad was traveling at the time, so when he got back, she then took that to him.
So now I actually told him on the phone.
Oh. Yeah. So now you're 8 years old, she eventually gets published, and as we move down the line, you are 5 books in. Mom, what does it mean to you to have a child who is doing something so out of the ordinary and exceptional?
It's both fulfilling and frightening. Fulfilling in the sense that she's also a very selfless person. She likes giving, she likes sharing. Frightening in the sense that I just don't understand how it's happening. I've tried to retrospect, I don't know. how it's happening. So, yeah, it frightens me. The future, what the future could hold.
What do you think your parents, what kind of space do you think your parents have held for you to be able to do what you're doing? Because not many parents would be accommodating or understanding.
My parents are my biggest supporters. They're the reason where I am today. I mean, my mom took it upon herself to self-publish all of my books. She has a publishing company, Profounder Publishing, which has been huge help to me getting my product out there. And my father, he's usually the one that takes me to interviews. My mother's usually the one that travels with me. So they are my biggest supporters and definitely my biggest role models, and what I think every parent should be to their child. Supporting, loving, and caring, but also have enough authority to ground them. Because yes, I do have those little glimpses to quote unquote bully my parents, but for most of the time, I am deeply respectful and grateful for them.
Mom, are you at all worried that she might be growing up too quickly?
She has grown up too quickly already. I am extremely worried. And I tell her every day, it's frightening again, yes, because at the age of 7, for instance, I couldn't think that she would write. At the age of 8, I didn't think. She addressed 1,200 metric learners when she was 8. At the age of 12, I didn't know that she would be traveling around the world, you know. So it's really, but I'm very grateful given the background that I come from. Yeah.
Which means you provided something to allow this to happen, because, and one of the reasons that I think it was so important to have you here is that having a child that's gifted is one thing, but having a gifted child in a home where the gift can be nurtured is a whole other thing altogether.
Can I use this opportunity to actually tell the viewers something that is really bugging me about the African child? You know, African children are extremely gifted. They are extremely gifted, and they are big dreamers, but the parents are killing the dreams. The children who are raising our parents are so self-indulged that they don't really look at their children. You know, Stacey's own for us was an accident. I wouldn't really say we took the time to look, you know, but if parents were to sit down and look at their children, I mean, many African children will be somewhere else today.
Look, I hear you completely. It's so... some parents, I think, in fairness to them, they are ill-exposed, they are ill-equipped, they don't have the resources, they're doing the best that I can, and they might not have the capacity or even the understanding, because in the guidebook that doesn't exist to raising children, there isn't that chapter that says, if your child is gifted in whatever the case may be, these are the steps that you follow. But definitely, as a society, we can be doing a lot better when it comes to our gifted children.
The Stacey Fru Foundation actually works with children, and to support what you are saying, it's completely true, but also some are just self-indulged. Like I'm saying, a majority of them, the parents that I've come across, where we even volunteer to help, but the parents don't want to sacrifice their time.
I understand.
You know, so it's, for me, it's just that thing of time. Because even somebody would want to help your child, but the child is illegal to be in the company of that child without an adult. So for me, for instance, I'm not going to take anybody's child and be with when the parent is not ready to be there. Because should anything happen, it's my responsibility. And parents don't want to be there. So that's what I'm saying.
So, Mom, when did you actually realize that this is not just a one-time thing, that this is actually something that is a real gift that can be turned into a career and even a whole life calling?
I think we didn't realize. We just went with the flow, because by the time she handed in her first book, while we busy sourcing publishers, she was writing the second. By the time she delivered her first speech, while we busy trying to teach her how to deliver, she was being invited by the media and other organizations to speak. So we just didn't have time to think.
So you were following her lead?
We were following the lead, yes.
Stacey, how has the journey been for you, and do you consider yourself to be a gifted child?
In the beginning, the journey was very stressful for me. I was 8 years old. I was new to everything that was happening, and everything was happening so fast. The media interviews, for one, annoyed me for some reason. And I actually asked my mom that I wanted to stop. But after giving it some thought, I realized that this is what I needed to do in order to fulfill what I want or my vision for the African child. And now I'm completely used to everything, managing it with my school as well, because like I said, I hold myself to a high standard. So I think that it's been a very long journey, but it's been very worth it, and I look forward to many more years.
What is your vision for the African child?
My vision for the African child is for each to be educated in an environment where they feel safe and secure, and for them to be provided with the tools for them to flourish.
And is this what you hope to do through your literary work?
Yes, and through my foundation.
Mom, how proud are you?
I'm not proud, I'm grateful. Very grateful.
So you're not proud of her? You're just grateful?
I'm grateful.
Final words from each of you. I'll start with you, Mom.
I think for me, I just want to say parenting is a gift, and a gift is something that has to be nurtured. So I call on every parent to just look at the gift, appreciate the gift, and indulge themselves in it.
Stacey, final words?
My final words would be to anyone watching, specifically children, and that is to find something that you are passionate about and grow that passion and nurture it until you are satisfied with where you are.
Thank you so much, ladies, for coming through and for having this conversation and for sharing both of your stories with us. I think it's absolutely beautiful. As Mom correctly said, there are so many gifted children, and maybe there is not an environment or support structure to nurture that gift. You're fortunate enough that yours is being nurtured, and we'll definitely look out for you and see where your life takes you.
Thank you.
#Unpacked with Relebogile. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let us know your thoughts on this discussion. And if there's anything that you feel you'd like to share with us or see on the show, get in touch with us. Socials and details on your screen. Thanks for joining us. Have a good night. Next time on Unpacked.
I really do believe that procreation is God's expression of love.
So it was time for us to have a family of our own.
Got into the water, 5 pushes, baby was out. She started hyperventilating, and then she became still. And when I put my ear to her chest, her heartbeat had stopped.
Thank you so much for watching Unpacked with Relebogile Mabotja. Make sure you subscribe to my channel where you can get to watch more episodes. But more importantly, you can be part of our online community. Comment down below, share with us who you'd like to see on the show, what story you'd like us to discuss. We love engaging with you. Keep it coming, and don't forget to subscribe.